on the line right now, we have with us one of our Grandmaster Scholar Warriors. I've had her on the African History Network show twice before. It's always a pleasure to have her on, to be in her presence, to talk to her. I'm talking about none other than the one and only Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Hotep, my sister, how you doing tonight?
Hotep, good evening. How are you?
I'm fantastic, sister, and I was just, right before the show, I was just at a planning meeting for African Liberation Day, so everybody is excited about you coming to Detroit, excited to hear from you, and, it's always, always a pleasure to talk to you and to be in your presence. So I'm fantastic.
Very good, very good.
Definitely, sister. Well, there's a lot going on, and, just when you think things have calmed down somewhat, something happens and things jump off. And, tonight, I've already let the people know you're going to be here in about your lecture, and I'm going to give them some more details about that as we go further into the segment here tonight. But I really wanted to talk to you about Donald Sterling scandal in a culture of white supremacy. And the reason why is because when we hear people like, say, a Donald Sterling, it doesn't have to be him specifically, but just someone like that, when we hear him say something ignorant or what have you, some people may write it off as this person just being a bigot or this person being a racist, something like that. But Donald Sterling, in his the famous 10-minute segment of the telephone conversation that he had with the Vistiviano, he also talked about a culture, and he said, "This is the way the culture is." Basically,
so
I think this
she
way
didn't
because the culture.
Understand the culture.
Yes. And personally, the silver lining of the cloud is I think he did us a big favor to admit that culture exists and it affects the way people think.
Well, you and I are on the same page.
Yes.
Because I call it the Sterling Silver Civiano affair.
Okay.
And I say that I'm just so pleased that it took place. And the way that I look at that is that it was a truth offering.
Yes.
Because, see, there's so much, in other words, the major dynamic in this area of the world is the denial of racism.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you see? And so the media denies it. White people deny it. Many black people deny that why do we have to talk about racism? Racism is not a problem anymore. And just like you said, it keeps popping up because truth crushed to earth will always rise.
Yes.
Because it is reality. Truth is reality. Reality is truth. And so these events keep coming up in spite of all the effort. It's like a big elephant under the rug, and no matter how many people try to crush and keep the elephant from stirring, the rug continues to rumple.
Right.
And so I say this was a profound truth offering, a really profound truth offering, because it was a continuous statement of racism, white supremacy, at the same time the denial that this is what I am.
Absolutely.
And, all of my work is based on trying to understand racism, white supremacy, and as a psychiatric physician, help black people understand racism, white supremacy, because I say it's key to our mental health. This is the dynamic that is happening. This is why black people greet each other, say, hey, what's happening? What's happening? Because we don't understand what's going on. Do you see, why is it that we find ourselves always back in the same place? We thought we had achieved voting rights, and now we're circling around and talking about trying to get assured voting rights again. We thought we had achieved school integration. And what do we find ourselves? The children are being more poorly educated than ever in the history.
Mm-hmm.
Schools are closing. Do you see, every problem that we give a name to that we think we have solved, it comes back and hits us in the face because the problems are symptoms of the total system of racism, white supremacy. But that is consistently being denied. And so Donald Sterling, I'm sure he doesn't know he made more than a multi-billion-dollar offering to black people.
Right.
With his statements and the truth of what it is that he didn't know was spilling out of his mouth.
Right.
But there it is on record. And so you have the media, all the people, the white people in the media are scuffling around and calling him a racist, but they themselves refuse to talk about racism.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so this was a gift. And so black people all over this area of the world and all over the world should start talking and consistently talk about, no matter how the court proceedings work out,
Absolutely.
the Sterling Silver Siviano revelations.
I'm going to have to remember that. Okay. Absolutely.
See, all those S's are important. It's like one can say the SS.
Okay.
This is a wonderful offering, meaning that truth, even though you might find the truth uncomfortable, but truth is always a greater benefit than the denial or the pretense that something doesn't exist. If you can confront truth, and I say that truth, to be able to look at truth, is also a measure of self-respect.
Yes.
Do you see, no matter how difficult it is, the willingness to look at it means that you are achieving a higher level of respect for self. And I say self-respect is more powerful than a nuclear weapon.
Well,
See, this is also the missing ingredient.
Okay.
Because for a group of people, the people who structured the system of racism, white supremacy, local, national, global, one of the critical things that was essential, because that people who classify themselves as white are a tiny minority of the people on this planet.
Right.
Fewer than 1/10. The vast majority of the people are black, brown, red, and yellow. And so when the people who classify themselves as white began to come out of Europe and circumnavigate the planet, and they found that the majority of people were people of color. And when the white men had sexual relations with the women of color, they realized that all the children looked like their mothers, that white could be genetically annihilated, even though they didn't talk in genetic terms, but they could see that white disappears. And so their whole effort for the past 500 years has been the effort for white genetic survival, even though they can call it by different names. They can call it imperialism. They can call it capitalism. They can call it colonialism. They can give different names to it.
Right.
But bottom line, it is a total system, and this is what Neely Fuller has helped us understand from the time he laid out that racism is white supremacy. There's no other racism. There could be people of color with attitudes, but racism is a power structure and a power dynamic that operates in economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And so from the time they recognized that they were a tiny minority that could disappear, genetically disappear, in the sea of the global non-white majority, they have this system in operation, and essential to the operation was the destruction of the self-respect for people of color, and of black people in particular, because black has the greatest genetic potential to cause white genetic annihilation. And so
Right.
that's why all people of color learn. If you're black, get back, brown, stick around, yellow, mellow, white, right. That's the color code for white genetic survival. And so, people think, oh, no, that just, they just think that it's the darker color. It's not just the darker color. The darker color has the most powerful genetic potential to cause white genetic annihilation, and it's all the same pigment, but the people who have the greatest genetic potential to produce the highest quantity, and they appear as the darkest people. They are the people that are most feared, and therefore want to put most color behind everything else. And see, the sterling, the sterling Silver Civiano affair brought out so much of this.
Yes.
It brought out a man who classifies himself as white talking about being jealous of black men.
Yes.
It brought out V. Civiano talking, or was Sterling talking about how she hated her color and she wanted to be white, and that she used bleaching cream, and that of all of her siblings, they were all Hispanic, but she was Hispanic and black.
Yes.
Now, all of this came out of this man's mouth, including bringing in people into the locker room of the Clippers when the black men would be half-dressed. And he would tell strangers, just almost like a slave market, look at their beautiful bodies.
Right. Right.
So
I heard
all of this offering, I say it's a cosmic offering. All of this came out in the presence of black people and people who classify themselves as white. Not all black people, of course, but large numbers. See, I would dare say the majority of our group, black people, would prefer to not talk about racism.
Correct.
And see, tragically, because we don't want to talk about the real cause, and this is why when black people would talk about racism on the TV or something, and the white people would start jumping up and down talking about you're playing the race card.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Donald Sterling laid out the whole race deck.
Yes, he did.
And Mark Garagos, who was on CNN, he's one of their legal analysts. Mark Garagos says he hears people talking like Donald Sterling every day and all the time. So, you see, if we were really wise, black people would get all the tapes, all the transcripts, and sit down in study groups and dare anyone to deny that racism, white supremacy is the dominant system on the planet. See, even the word America, America, contains the phrase, I am race.
Right.
See, just like the word Jesus in Ebonics is just us.
Yeah, I played that clip before you came on. Yeah. Yes,
you see,
you're
so
correct.
truth, everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we begin to understand everything is energy, and this is why it cannot be destroyed, and why truth will always become evident. And it will just keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Absolutely.
The energy forces will keep pushing and pushing until people come to terms with reality. And when I was trained in psychiatry over 40 years ago, they used to tell us, see, now psychiatry doesn't want to talk about reality because then it would have to talk about racism and white supremacy. And so the dominant people in the field are people who classify themselves as white. They don't want to talk about white behavior. So they are now pushing pharmacological psychiatry. In other words, any complaint, just take a pill. Certainly don't decode the system of racism, white supremacy, because you might really get well, and then the system will be in difficulty. But we were trained that years ago that the role of the psychiatrist is to help people face reality even when they are afraid to do so. And so we must keep trying to find the courage and the self-respect. See, people talk about spirituality. In my view, see, there is a creative force in the universe, and you can call it God, you can call it whatever you want to call it, that is responsible for making this grand and glorious universe that has some problematic people. And I say that the creative force made black people the mothers and fathers of everybody on the planet. White people couldn't produce all the colors. Black people can produce all of the colors, starting with crystal black, highest level of black. Then next you make a mutation to albinism, and that's what white people are. They're a mutation, a genetic deficiency state. But you combine those two together, and you get all the colors in the middle.
Right.
So the creative force made black people the mothers and fathers of everybody on the planet. But under white supremacy, black people have been taught to hate black, which, as I said, came out in V. Siviano's, about her that Donald Sterling talked about how she wanted to be white. Although she did have the courage to say, I'm black and Hispanic.
Right.
You see, so how could you be hating black people? How can you say these things, right?
Absolutely.
So she had the courage to, to me she gets an A+.
Absolutely.
Because her discussion was completely and totally relevant to the reality of racism, whether she recognized it or not. So
absolutely.
If black people, if we can get the courage to respect ourselves, in other words, like African Liberation Day. See, liberation can come in many forms. And I say what we need is the liberation of our minds and the transformation of our minds, beginning with the understanding of this great problem on the planet, which is the system of racism, white supremacy. Do you see that? By black people learning how to respect themselves, because whatever you want to call the creative force in the universe that made us black and made the condition of crystal black, highest level black, that as long as we are in disrespect of that, we are in disrespect of the creative force.
Absolutely.
And then people want to beg and pray to the Creator, help me with this, help me with that. And I would say the Creator said, you're spitting in my eye. I made you black because black is the most critical thing on the planet. That's how come the astronomers are all talking about dark matter, and the most powerful thing is the black hole. Racism, white supremacy has trained black people to hate themselves as black, to be glad that the slave masters raped our great-grandmothers, and so people don't look black and are trying to look white. And see, the system of racism pays the highest salaries to black people who, without understanding, are calling black people niggers and dogs and bitches and hoes and gangsters and thugs. See, that's the complete annihilation of black self-respect. And people think it's entertainment.
Correct.
No, that's the system of racism, white supremacy. You know, it's no different than racism, white supremacy said, I will not give you jobs. I will not give you significant employment. I will not give you education. I will not give you housing, but I will give you guns. And I will give you drugs.
Right.
And so then you can destroy yourselves based on my motivation.
Wow.
So, you know, we are challenged. I say we are challenged as the parent people on the planet to begin to use our thought faculties and to be able to analyze and to be able to develop strategies and tactics to replace the system of racism, white supremacy with justice. See, there's no time to hate white people. That's cheap. That's a waste of time. You know, you don't win a basketball game or a football game hating your opponent. You win based on your understanding of the game and the knowledge of what plays are necessary playing against the particular opponent. And so, to me, this is the challenge, our continuing struggle for liberation and understanding at ever higher levels what liberation can mean.
Right. Definitely agree with that. And these are some of the things we want to celebrate also this weekend with African Liberation Day as well in Detroit. We're gonna go to the phone line for a few calls in a few minutes here. The calling number is area code 914-338-1375. 914-338-1375. If you have a question or comment, press the number 1 key to put you in queue so we can bring you on the air. We're going to transition into the TV show Scandal in just a few minutes here also.
Now your voice is dropping off, so I can't hear.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
That's better.
Okay. We're going to transition into the TV show Scandal in just a few minutes here. But I wanted to ask you, when you came here to Detroit April 20th last year, you were at the Shrine of the Black Madonna church, and you did your lecture. And I played a couple of clips of the lecture leading up to you coming on tonight, okay? And one of the things that you said was that any person who refuses to talk about racism and white supremacy hates black people. And I found that very interesting. You alluded to it a few minutes ago when you talked about how if you're on TV and you bring it up, you have an African-American person brings up race, people say you're playing the race card, things like this. But even when you have people who are well-meaning Europeans who say, I don't see color, I'm colorblind, things like this, and don't want to talk about racism. Can we talk about that? Because there's a push for the colorblind society and things like that. And from my understanding, basically what that means is that you see something wrong with the person's color, but you don't really want to admit that there's something wrong with it, so you want to pretend like it doesn't exist. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Well, see, I'm only saying that, in other words, racism, the dynamic structure of racism, white supremacy. Let me just read my definition.
Go ahead.
Racism, white supremacy is the local and global power system and dynamic, structured and maintained by persons who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined, which consist of patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response, as conducted simultaneously in all areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, for the ultimate purpose of white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on planet Earth, a planet upon which the vast and overwhelming majority of people are classified as non-white, black, brown, red, and yellow by white-skinned people, and all of the non-white people are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration compared to the genetic recessive white-skinned people. So the dynamic of racism has to destroy black people for the purpose of white genetic survival. And that's genocide. And I say that is what is happening to black people. In other words, the destruction, and it's the tactic or the strategy is the destruction of black men. And if you destroy the men of a people, you will have destroyed the people. And we are watching and seeing this, the incarceration of black men, black males dropping out of school, fathers, husbands not in the home, because men have to have employment to function as husbands and fathers. And so if there's high-level unemployment, then you are making necessary for people to try to find other means to bring in income or make money, and then you set up the law so that in their doing that so-called illegal activity, they can go to jail. You can remove them from the community. So we are on a genocide slide within the system of racism, white supremacy, a system for white genetic survival. So if indeed this dynamic is going on, and everything that black people complain about are the symptoms of this dynamic, and so if people are refusing to talk about it, then even though they think they like black people, even though black people think they like black people, but if you're refusing to talk about the thing that is killing black people, then we have to say that you hate black people, whether you understand it or not.
Right.
You see, it's like, let's say as a physician, if I know that, let's say a certain food product has poison in it, but I say I really want to protect my reputation, and I want to be looked upon as being responsible. So I don't tell people. And so then people eat the food product and die. Can you say Francis Welsing loves the people or hates the people?
Yeah, hates the people. Doesn't love them.
He fails to tell the people about something that will injure and destroy and kill them.
Right.
See, racism, white supremacy is the highest form of terrorism and injustice that has ever been conceived on the planet. Racism as white supremacy, because it's a tiny number of people that is genetic recessive, that has decided it has to survive by any means necessary, and that is by the destruction of people of color.
Absolutely. Okay. Just a second here. If you have a question or comment, give us a call, 914-338-1375. Press the number 1 key to put you in queue to bring you on the air. We've got Dr. Wilson for a few more minutes here. And we're going to go to the phone lines quickly. Now, we're not going to have time for dissertations and manifestos tonight, okay? We know you love Dr. Wilson, but questions so we can get to them expeditiously. And then I want to get into TV show Scandal in a minute here, but we're going to try to get a couple calls here quickly. Let's see who's been on the longest. Okay, we're going to the 313 area code, and then we'll go to the 215. It looks like here. We're going to the 313-424 area code. Let's see. Okay, call on the 313-424. Tell us your name, where you're calling from. Call on the 313-424 area code. Are you there? Here's okay. Okay, let's try the other one, the 313. Just a second here. All right, caller 313-588. Tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Good evening, Mike. How are you tonight?
Hey, how you doing, Frank? You all right?
Very good, sir. Pleasure to speak with Ms. Welsing. It's a absolute pleasure, ma'am.
My pleasure.
Unfortunately, I'll be out of town. I hate the fact that I won't be able to join you at the Charles H. Wright Museum on the 23rd. But so glad that you're coming back to Detroit again.
Thank you. Okay. I look forward to being there.
My question to you tonight is, with white supremacy and racism itself, are they one and the same, or are they two different entities?
The same thing. Racism is white supremacy, and white supremacy is racism. There's no other racism. In other words, let's say that if I stood on the street and called people who classify themselves as white every conceivable name, that's just Frances Welsing just talking. She cannot control whether people who classify themselves as white have housing, have clothing, have shelter, have jobs, have hospitals, schools, etc. So that's just somebody talking. They don't have any power over the lives of people who classify themselves as white. And so this is what is essential. That's why I bothered to develop a definition of what racism, white supremacy is. It's the system structure for white genetic survival. It's the system structure for the power equation of white power over a relative non-white powerlessness.
Okay.
And if people are going to successfully, see, it's like if you are going to play chess, you have to first understand the game. If you're going to play checkers, you have to understand the game. And we have not understood the game. In other words, when we were in formal slavery, we thought if they would just take these chains off, if they would just end this system of slavery, that everything is going to be all right. And we found out that Lincoln emancipated the enslaved African people, and then they structured laws. See, I say Reconstruction was the reconstruction of racism, white supremacy. The black people thought they were free. They thought they were emancipated. But after the chains came off, then laws were put in place so that black people could be controlled and demeaned. See, I tell people that at the point that Abraham Lincoln so-called emancipated the African people, that if everybody had been free, there was no color discrimination whatsoever. So everybody was mixing and blending. White people would disappear.
Correct. I believe that.
So if you ask white people, do you want to disappear? They want to tan, but they don't want to disappear. So that means that they have to, and this is why there's a whole long historical period where black men would be lynched and castrated for thinking about, wanting to think about a white woman. Now they are using white women to control black men by saying, okay, now white women, you can have your ideal mate, tall, dark, and handsome. But you are contributing to his confusion about the problem of racism, white supremacy. But that's very important that you have now been unleashed to engage in the confusion of the black man.
Mm-hmm.
Am I making myself clear? And simultaneously developing a so-called mixed race group of people where the mother is white. So the black man plus the white woman produce a child. The child is medium color, not white, but medium color. The white female tells the child, "You're not black." And so then the child, what? Develops hatred of black. If it hadn't been for this black father, I could have been all white. But that mindset can be a useful tool for the maintenance of the system of racism, white supremacy.
Okay. All right, Frank, thanks for calling in, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, brother. Take care. Hold up. All right. Let's try to squeeze in another call quickly here. Call in the 252 area code. Tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Yes, my name is Ronnie Anderson, and I'm calling from
Ronnie, how you doing?
North Carolina. Okay, good. Yes, Dr. Wilson, I'm glad to finally speak with you. Matter of fact, I was watching your video just...
Hold on, Ronnie, just a second.
Okay.
Repeat your name, Ronnie, where you're calling from, okay? And talk up a little bit.
Yes, Ronnie Anderson from Greenville, North Carolina.
Did you hear that, Dr. Wilson?
Just tell them to speak as loud as possible.
Okay, she said speak as loud as possible.
Okay. Yes, I'm calling. My name is Ronnie Anderson, and I'm calling from Greenville, North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I was just looking at your video just last night about what you're speaking on today, and it was well appreciated. But I have a question, and my question is pertaining to something that me and a friend of mine was speaking about today. We was in debate about it.
So you're going to have to repeat that, host, because I can't hear him.
I'll repeat it for you, Dr.
Okay.
Wilson. I'll repeat it for you, Dr. Wilson. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Okay. And my question is, do black people purposely support the white racist supremacy system? And if so, why do they?
Okay, do black people purposely support the European white supremacy system, and if so, why do they? Is that your question, Ronnie?
Yes, because
I would say that the vast majority of black people do not understand the problem as I'm describing it.
Yes.
Do you see, in other words, this is new thought, starting with Neely Fuller, who was the first person to talk about racism, white supremacy as a total system structure. And so the vast majority of black people do not understand racism, white supremacy as a system. We can call it the miseducation of black people. Carter G. Woodson wrote about the miseducation of black people. And so the system of racism, white supremacy hardly wants us to use the word racism, and this is why Donald Sterling's revelations, in spite of himself, are so important. Because people don't want to talk about racism. It's like talk about anything. Talk about homosexuality. Talk about anything other than racism, white supremacy, which is the key.
Right.
And so the attempt is made to block an understanding of racism, white supremacy as a total system structure. In addition to that, black people have been taught to hate themselves. Like
That's
if
right.
I develop 3 pills, the first pill will turn you white the next day. The second pill will give you long, straight hair. The third pill would give you so-called white features. I would be the wealthiest person on the planet within a matter of 7 days. Because all of the people of color on the planet have been taught to hate white. This came out, as we said earlier, in the Donald Sterling dialogue about V. Sibiano. She said she hated being black, that she wanted to be white. Look at all the people walking around with long straight hair that they buy. Look at the people who are bleaching their skin. And it's not only black people, it's people in Asia, people in India. Wherever there are people of color who have been psychologically damaged by racism, white supremacy. And so black people are supporting, not only that, the system gave black people the image of God as a white man.
Thank you. I'm glad you bring that up.
This was one of the cleverest things that the system did. And this was given to us when we were in chains. And said, here, my image is God. And black people were being beaten and raped and mistreated for hundreds of years. And with the concept, oh, maybe there's a white person, God in heaven, who's going to come and save me. Well, this is a deep brain-computer implant.
Yes, it is.
Jesus, if he was a historical figure in the part of the world, Middle East and Northern Africa, he could not have been white. Billy Graham even says Jesus could not have been white if he was a historic figure in that part of the world. But if you are going to hold people in oppression, first you deny them a deep level of education. So they're not reading every book and searching for information and knowledge. And so you keep them in a state of non-learning. And then you tell them that the image of God, who they should be worshiping, who they should be looking to solve their problem, is the same image of the oppressor.
That's right.
So this is what has been done to us, and the challenge is for us to respect ourselves at a sufficient level so we begin to think. See, this is why the system has black people playing a lot of loud music that is sensory overload so the brain can't function. Just boom, de boom, de boom. You see? And that's supposed to be entertainment. But it also cuts off effective thinking. So, again, by us, by black people thinking and first of all, beginning to deeply respect ourselves as black people, that this is key. Nothing without self-respect. See, self-respect was what allowed for the Civil Rights Revolution, when the black people were determined to oppose the laws of segregation, and they went up against horses and dogs, police dogs, and fire hoses, and gave their lives. Well, the system said, wait a minute, we can't allow this to continue. The people could not have made that step if they didn't respect themselves and were not willing to give their lives. As Martin Luther King said, if you haven't found that thing for which you're willing to give your life is not worth living, meaning if your self-respect has not reached a sufficient level. And so from that point on, then the system said, no, we can transform. See, black people came out of that movement talking about black pride, black self-respect, black dignity, black is beautiful, black power. And that had to be annihilated. And it was annihilated by telling black people they could be movie stars, but then they would be trashy images, using drugs, cursing at one another, shooting and killing one another, and then bring it up to, musical entertainment and have all kind of trashy language and black people calling themselves trashy names. See, you can't be a bitch and a whore and a dog and have self-respect.
Right.
It's impossible. You got one brain computer, And if the brain computer is dialed towards bitch, whore, gangster, thug, freak, that's a complete annihilation of self-respect. You can get the people to do anything. And all you have to do is turn on the TV and just look at some of the commercials that black people are in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, thanks, brother, for your call. Thanks for your call.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks, brother. Okay, Dr. Wilson, we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, 15 past the hour.
I can hear you, sweetheart.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, if you speak up, it's almost like your voice drops away.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at my notes here. Okay. We're going to end this segment about 15 past the hour in about 11 minutes here. I wanted to transition and ask you about the TV show Scandal. I know you were on the Carl Nelson show on the radio talking about that a few months ago, but the TV show Scandal on ABC, for those that don't know, it has become a pop cultural phenomenon, okay? A lot of people find out about it through social media, and at the center of it you have Olivia Pope, who is a quote-unquote powerful African-American woman, and now, originally she was involved in one relationship with a white male who's the president, President Fitz, fictional president. Now she's involved in two relationships with white men, President Fitz and I think his name is Jake. Okay, what do you make of the popularity of Scandal and especially the support that is getting from African-American women? I just don't understand this. Can you help me? Maybe I need to come see you for some psychiatric help.
See, again, if you understand the system, mm-hmm. and it's just like I've been saying, to hold people in oppression, you have to destroy their self-respect.
Yes, yes.
You have to destroy their self-respect.
Yes.
And so basically, Scandal is, in other words, for the hundreds of years we were in formal slavery. You had the slave master with his black concubines, plural concubines.
Yes.
This is Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. But what has happened is that the system has gone so far in the destruction of black men, so that 70% of the black households are single parent, unmarried, women don't have men. Mm-hmm. Do you see? And so women, it's the nature of women to want to have a man with power, a protector. And that is what is missing from the lives of black women. In the system of racism, white supremacy, because the man has been destroyed. And it's essential to destroy the black man because he is the threat to white genetic survival. And so what do we see being pushed? Black men, you want to be gay, you want to be homosexual. This is not to put down the person who says they're gay.
Right.
It's not homosexual bashing because medicine doesn't even have the answers as to why we're seeing an epidemic in the effeminization of black men. But I say it also has to do with the removal of large numbers of men and incarcerating them. Not only if you incarcerate them for prolonged periods of time, large numbers begin to have sex with each other.
Yes.
That's understood. Do you see? But all of it is a part of the symphony of the destruction of black people. Do you see? So the biggest thing in the news next to Sterling, Donald Sterling, and his revelations was what? A gigantic, tall black man, football player,
yes,
embracing and kissing a white man.
I was about to ask that question, yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, pieces of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
of white genetic survival and the things that have to be done to the black collective, male and female. Do you see? So, I mean, it's got to be painful to our ancestors if they're looking down and seeing black women worshiping, being the concubine for a white man.
Right, right. Willingly.
And glorifying in it. You see, but again, to the extent that racism, white supremacy is not understood. I got a call from somebody because I was criticizing Scandal, and they said, "You're just jealous." God bless. Do you understand? I mean, but it really is. It's just our absence of understanding. It's just like I looked at a black man, I'm driving, looking at a black man crossing the street, and he had his pants down but almost below his buttocks. This is a grown black man, where people don't even understand what that means. I say that comes from father hunger and really wanting to have male substance injected into the rectum, if not the mouth.
Is that dealing with prison culture at all? Because from my understanding,
yes, all of it is tied. But in other words, see, it's like if your body is deficient in vitamin A.
Okay.
It might occur to your brain, I need to get some greens. I need to go buy some greens. See, greens have vitamin A.
Okay.
So your brain will guide you. You know, when you think, okay, let me go and get some greens, you're not thinking, I'm deficient in vitamin A. My body is telling my brain to go and get food substance that has vitamin A. So we have the tragedy under white supremacy of black male masculine deficiency because fathers have been taken out of the home.
Right.
Males grow up just looking at their mothers put on earrings, fix their hair, but father absence. And so male children, I've had male children say, parent will bring the child to the psychiatrist and say he won't study or he won't do his homework. And to have a little child, 10 years old, tell the doctor, Dr. Welsing, I think I could do my homework if I just had an official father.
Wow. Wow.
Do you see? Or another child say, if I had a father, Dr. Welsing, he at least could explain to me what goes on under the hood of a car. See, that makes me as a psychiatrist want to fall on the floor and cry.
Wow.
You see, because the children are feeling the pain of the attack, and we are not yet in sufficient number understanding the attack, or we are wanting. You see, it's like Scandal is a variation on the theme of black women going to church and wanting Jesus, white man, to love them.
But to take it a step further, and we're about to wrap it up here, I'm gonna give people the details of African Liberation Day, how you can come see the sister
well,
in
let me
Detroit.
just throw in so the women won't be hurt,
Go ahead.
or the black men, for that matter, looking at porn.
Well, I don't get the connection. To say that again, what would you say about looking at porn? What would you say?
In other words, I said black women going to church and wanting Jesus to love them, white male.
Okay.
Do you see, which is what Scandal is all about? Love me.
Okay,
White
right.
male who has power.
Right.
While the black man is thinking, just look at all the basketball players and the football players and the rap star. I have to have a white woman.
Okay.
See,
I
you
got
see
you.
what I'm saying? In other words, it's just what has happened to us, black men, black women, under the system of racism, white supremacy.
Absolutely. And and to take it one step further very quickly, even worse, that possibly even worse, or just as worse, is African American women comparing to Jesus, trying to see how he measures up to Jesus. I don't know if you've dealt with people like that.
Wait a minute,
but
say that again.
I said the other thing, to take it a step further, is even worse or just as worse, is African American women comparing their husband, their boyfriend, or what have you, to Jesus, to see if he, because some women are taught to go find a man like Jesus, and they compare their boyfriend, husband, or what have you, to Jesus. Okay?
Okay.
And then they're disappointed when he doesn't measure up. Well, I don't know if you've dealt with people like that before, but I've talked to women like that.
Okay.
Yes, so that's something big.
See, but
well,
it's like if we are able to lay all of this information out, it's like drawing a circle, and the circle represents a system of racism, white supremacy. It's like the edge, and the straight edge pieces of a puzzle. And so then you begin to see where all of the pieces fit.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing is going to be in Detroit once again, Friday, May 23rd, at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in celebration of African Liberation Day. So this is put on by the African Liberation Day Planning Committee in the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. It's Friday, May 23rd, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tickets are $15, or you can get 2 tickets for $25. Dr. Welsing is going to be dropping this type of information on us. I'm telling you right now, bring a pen and a pad with you to take notes. Okay? When you come see the sister, please bring a pen and a pad to take notes. For more information and to get tickets, call Brother Paul Taylor at 313-477-1146, 313-477-1146, or Brother Greg McKenzie at 313-578-1300, 313-578-1300. And there are festivities on Saturday. Also, Saturday is free for you to attend. It's 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the same location, Charles H. Wright Museum. We have this flyer on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So check it out there. We hope to see you there. And sister, I just want to thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on. We love talking to you, and you always have a wealth of information to help us navigate this system, understand what's going on. And, I talk about at the African History Network how right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. So, you are the epitome of that. Right knowledge corrects wrong behavior.
Well, thank you, and we're all going to keep our shoulder to the wheel and make certain that we replace racism, white supremacy with justice, so there can be peace on the planet and the maximal development of all people.
Absolutely. Well, look, sister, you have a great night, and I will see you Friday, May 23rd in Detroit. Okay, sister?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, Hotep.
Okay.
All right, family, we'll be back in a few minutes.